If you needed proof that life was a simulation, the past 9 days would be the perfect situation.
TikTok had self-imposed a total blackout on the app.
Ended up taking effect for a total of 3 to 4 or 5 hours.
What Trump put on the table was new and innovative, owned by the government, which is like the strongest partner that one could have.
With us, TikTok is worth 500 billion to $1 trillion.
Mr. Beast, Elon Musk, and others that have expressed interest into buying the platform.
Another episode, another week in the books. We went through the rumor of a ban that we weren't completely confident that it was going to take effect. Ended up taking effect for a total of probably 3 to 4 or 5 hours. It's so crazy. We had an elected president effectively say that any company that supported in keeping TikTok alive wouldn't be fined. And then 24 hours later, we had the President of the United States sign an executive order to officially cement TikTok still being in business in the United States. And so, in regards to TikTok in the US, we live to fight another day. What a weird, honestly, if you needed proof that life was a simulation, I think the past 9 days would be the perfect situation. This could be a movie, the week that we had. And I think it was a roller coaster of emotions. It's one of those situations that we are super fortunate to be able to experience in a weird way. Because there aren't a lot of companies that can say that they've gone through having their main channel of business be threatened of a ban, of a federal national ban, then actually have a federal national ban imposed and then have that ban reverted so quickly. It's so crazy when you think of it.
Yeah, it might be a first in history, as a matter of fact. We're not completely out of the situation, as TikTok is still not available on the App Store nor Google Play. So no users can't update the app nor download the app. However, people that already had it on their phones, TikTok is using it. What was interesting about the last podcast is that TikTok had self-imposed a total blackout on the app. So while legally they were allowed to keep the servers operating and things of that nature, they were like, nope, if you're going to ban TikTok, we're out. We don't want to have nothing to do with it. In my opinion, it was a bit of a bluff to escalate the situation and for the Supreme Court to take them more seriously. Supreme Court didn't bite into it. So ultimately, TikTok did go black. They blacked out for, like you said, 5 hours until Trump made an official announcement that he's not going to pursue the actions or whatsoever. And he proposed a deal, which was actually quite interesting, which was also unexpected as out of all the theories of how things could play out. What Trump put on the table was new and innovative, which was that 50%, TikTok needs to be sold to the US, but 50% of it should be government owned, so owned by the government, which is actually a transition from having TikTok being like the enemy to then being owned by the government, which is like the strongest partner that one could have ever, right? Especially the US government. So if it goes through, TikTok is not only staying, but they have bigger ties with the US than Meta, than Google, and all these other companies because it's owned by the government. So that's super exciting. And since then, we've had people like Mr. Beast, Elon Musk, and others that have expressed interest into buying the platform. Nothing official yet, but
Kevin O'Leary,
TikTok is saved.
There's like a leaked video of Kevin O'Leary talking about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we went from thinking, okay, we're going to be out of business, or we have to completely switch and re-steer the direction of the ship to TikTok is going to become, if that does go through and it's owned by the government, it's going to become the biggest platform, and that's going to be so. It's honestly a blessing in disguise, this whole situation. So
and again, this is all personal opinion. I think even if it isn't owned by the U.S. government, I think perhaps the angle that Trump is trying to do is you set the extreme of we're going to own it as a government, and then it makes having TikTok owned by US private entities sounding like much more of a paradise and facilitating that transaction. A part of me feels like there's this anchor going on where he's saying, okay, the US owns 50% of it, but then angling that to facilitate a private owned US company to own it. Almost like instead of saying the extreme end is going to be a private company, it's going to be the government, and then the private company sounds like so much easier of a deal to broker. It's interesting because when he signed his executive order, the way that he framed it was like a business deal. And it just shows the contrast in between how the previous administration was addressing TikTok versus this administration, in the sense that the last administration just simply pushed this law, this bill into effect, didn't do anything. And then there are these weird 48 hours before Sunday where they tried angling themselves as wannabe saviors. Because there's a lot of talk of Joe Biden wanting to extend the deadline so that TikTok finds a deal. But then the thinking goes, why didn't you just facilitate TikTok finding a deal in the first place and not impose a bill to ban the channel? It's just very, very weird way of doing things. And then we saw very swift action with Trump, where while he was signing the executive order, he said something that caught my eye, which was, without us, TikTok is worth nothing. With us, TikTok is worth $500 billion to $1 trillion. And
yeah, he said a trillion.
The verbiage, or what I believe the right way to perceive that is, this isn't an extension for a delayed ban. This is an extension to finalize a long-term deal. And those are two very different narratives. I must say, we didn't expect the ban to go through. There's no way that we expected Donald Trump to revert it that quickly.
Yeah. I think he also gets what the public wanted, and you see that across other things, that other executive orders that he's passed since his inauguration. Also the crypto, the Trump coin, that was absolutely insane. But he is definitely a deal maker. I mean, his book is called The Art of the Deal. Like, he's done that his whole life, and I think that it's going to be super refreshing for international politics to operate that way. Less bureaucracy, just more action taking, and so on. And I think that not only is it going to do great for the economy, but it's also going to set the stepping stone for how Europe should operate as well, and more.
He's blazing the path, and I think he's opening up the door for other entrepreneurs to run as heads of nations or as leaders of nations, because he's the first, at least stateside, he's the first businessman in regards to backgrounds to get into that position. And you can see it. You can see very clearly that the way he operates is very different from the traditional politician. He was breaking down TikTok's deal during the signing of the executive orders, and he was breaking down the natures of the deal that he's looking for. And a journalist asked a question on how that deal would be structured, and he looked at the journalist and he just said, it's called a joint venture. You guys in this office, you guys probably haven't heard of that before, but that's the name of the type of deal. And I think that practicality from a business standpoint, infused into the role that he's taking on is going to be huge. I think just the signing of executive orders while giving a press conference, that alone, I put on my Instagram story while watching him sign the TikTok order. It was as if he was signing player contracts for sports. It's like you have the press conference where the players sign the contract publicly. It's like, oh, okay, energy, great, contract signed.
I think throughout his campaign, he realized the leverage that media has if done right. And I think this is a big, the fact that he did all of these podcasts, he got on TikTok, is the differentiator in the amount of votes that he got compared to Kamala Harris, because she didn't do any of that. She just kept to the traditional media outlets. And I think upon realizing the power that these new social media landscapes are providing, he's now doubling down on it. So every day he's in press conference. Yesterday he gave an interview with the World Economic Forum, and it seems like just every day he's going to take answers and just be out there, which is I think it's the right thing to do. He's just like doubling down on media, and that gives him more power. Like, he's probably the most listened to person in the world right now. So
Most definitely. I mean, TikTok alone, he garnered more than 60 billion views on the channel. From when he started up until now, he said this publicly in the Oval Office. He garnered more than 60 billion views on TikTok alone, without factoring
That's
in
crazy.
cross-posting to other channels, without factoring in podcast appearances. It's insane. From your end, as a CEO, you're managing this company at the forefront of probably one of the biggest opportunities in the media space, one of the biggest opportunities ever in the media space for businesses to take advantage of. What is your psyche and your mindset like right before the ban, so on Friday? And how does your psyche change Sunday to Monday as the leader of the company?
Well, we walked on adapting. And as discussed in the previous podcast, we knew that this would not be the end of the company, because the underlying skill sets remain the same for other platforms, and we can easily adapt. And just over the years, we've developed so many skills that are replicable to other things that we're doing. So I remained bullish throughout the entire way. And now seeing that ultimately it didn't happen, and like I said, it was a blessing in disguise, I remain I mean, I'm actually more excited, because this situation kind of forced me to check some of our fundamentals and improve them, and have a clear plan to action on how to ramp things up. And so that plan of action is still being executed on, and I think it's just like a big push that we've had to make this last week, that is not going to be needed for a platform transition, but the same efforts are going in back to the main service, and I'm quite excited by the effect of those. We started to see some. On a lead generation perspective, there's some drastic improvements that have been made over the last week, so I'm very excited about that. If that does well, it means 2-3 months from now, the business is like, it takes 2 to 3 months by the time we track something new to the time we see it in the financials. But so this is why I remain bullish, and I'm quite excited that actually I was kind of kicked in the butt to innovate and push hard again.
Yeah. It was an interesting situation where, as head of a department here, it was hammering that in, notably Thursday and Friday, where it's whatever happens, even if the ban were to stick, what we are serving is something that, regardless of the channel, is here to stay. Not only here to stay, but here to evolve, because we know that content creation is still only at the beginning of its journey as a medium, notably short form content. And to hit on your point of adapting, from a client acquisition standpoint, it was very much so educating and leading, guiding our potential partners and our existing partners through that paradigm of, yes, one channel may or may not be or have the perception of going out the door. With that being said, and it's something we've already been succeeding with for years, that is simply one posting button that's not available to you anymore. You have these other 5 publishing buttons that are all pushing short form video content. You have all of these algorithms who in the past 3 years have all TikTokified themselves. Regardless of what would have happened on Sunday, if things turned out differently, nothing from a standpoint of building traffic, building trust with that traffic, and then monetizing that traffic with short form videos would have inherently changed. And so I think that was the biggest that was the biggest pivot to take on in regards to front end messaging. And to your point, up until last week, we were very comfortable simply hitting TikTok. We didn't feel a need to reinforce certain, I don't want to say leaky buckets in our foundations, but certain points of improvement in our foundations. And now we have the added benefit of having that reversal. With that being said, I think the dumbest thing that we could do is not act on those points of improvement and those adaptations, because we now have a very raw picture of what can happen, and we now know how to solidify this thing even more. And the bulletproofing has already delivered fruits. We're seeing deal flow ramp back up again very quickly. We're seeing FOMO from the reversal come into play now as well. And I think a lot of brands have wisened up as well a lot of marketing teams have wisened up in the past week, where they're realizing, well, hang on a minute, regardless of if one platform were to be eliminated, we can still just post these videos and the principles still apply. With that being said, now, because TikTok is going nowhere, at least for the time being, there's this effect of, man, I'm not going to waste this opportunity anymore. I wasted it these past 2-3 years of not posting. Now I'm going to post. Now it's like, if I fail, I have no excuse to fall back on apart from myself. And that's huge. I think internally we're motivated as a team a bit more as well, because even though nothing would change from a service delivery standpoint, we felt the burn of, is it really getting banned? Shit, it's like, it's banned, we have to adapt, we have to whatever. We were all ready to accept TikTok being gone for good. And I think when you're ready to accept having to pivot or having to improve with a situation like this, if it's reverted or there's a turnaround that happens, it's like, no, now I'm on this path of making sure I don't get checked or that I'm never dependent on this. And it's been so interesting seeing how internal team motivation has just been reinforced with how things have gone through. Whereas I think before the whole ban, there were tinges of being too comfortable in our position. And now we know exactly what we need to do. We know exactly how to take a year that would have already been very aggressive in growth and just floor the pedal past the frame, which is, it's going to be exciting to see. We're taking no prisoners this year.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's like the saying, hard times make strong man and easy times make weak man. So
100%.
We're getting better out of this.
I mean, we're talking about reinforcing foundations, adapting. What do we mean by that? How are we adapting? What have we added in terms of focuses and delivery? What has changed that constitutes of adapting?
It's quite obvious now that social selling is the major trend in the creator economy. Again, TikTok is being a pioneer in that trend with TikTok Shop, but it's translating to Instagram affiliates, YouTube Shop. So one of our goals is to help our clients take these waves early. And as these platforms roll out, we want to be the first on them. And I think this transition helped us really realize that we needed to be active cross platforms. We always knew it was there, but we really want to put our foot on the pedal with that. And then there's the obvious cross posting on every platform. What we're doing beyond just cross posting is doing edits and adjustments to the content to match each platform culture.
I feel like it's so funny because it's stuff that we've already been doing, but from a front end perspective, this past week we've quickly realized just how many teams do not see their content in that way, where they believe if you film a video for YouTube, there's no way that it can be posted on Instagram or on LinkedIn. And if you film a video on TikTok, there's no way that it can be posted on YouTube Shorts or Pinterest or Instagram Reels. And so it's, from a front-end standpoint, it's very much educating brands and marketing teams that it is impossible or it's extremely inefficient to think that all of your content is siloed to each platform. And it's information that's so basic to us, where it took the situation of the past week to really focus on that as an actual angle and focus on that as an actual topic. Where no, I mean, me and you personally, we've scaled brands to 5K, 10K, 15K a day with the same video on 3 placements, different placements on ads platforms. It's such a quote unquote obvious thing to do. At the same time, it isn't obvious for majority of marketing teams out there who are trying to grow their first brand, or perhaps have never seen that 10K day with the same 30 seconds simply posted on 3 different places. And that's the world that we're living in now, where every algorithm is the exact same. Looking forward, what are your thoughts on the 75-day? I know I gave mine at the beginning, but for you, having been on the channel, on the organic side of the channel, as long as you have, how do you envision these 75 days playing out? Do you have any predictions in your head on how this will concretely go? You talked about the government. Do you think that's the way that it's going to end up, or do you think something else is going to happen?
I think there are going to be offers made. I think Trump is likely to hold a conversation with Jinping or the Chinese communists. I mean, they're likely to negotiate how this will roll out, and I think while it's not certain that it's going to be back. It's very likely to happen, I should say, because even if the 75 days deadline is not met, I think he will just extend it, because he also signed another executive order that was like banning governments to restrict freedom of speech, which is basically what the Supreme Court was doing with TikTok. So I think that whether it happens in the next 75 days or not, it's eventually, I mean, they'll just find a way to make it stay. Except, I mean, the only possible way is that if they're not able to make a deal with China. But I think Trump is actually quite good at making deals where everybody wins, and I think that's really his mentality going into these international politics. He's putting America first, but he's not taking advantage of others either. So
Yeah. I think there's this false association with putting America first with doing wrong by everybody else, when if history is an accurate lens, whenever America was put first, the rest of the world benefited, or majority of the world at least benefited from those decisions. Or else, I mean, just lies in the connotation of leaders of the free world. But we're not a politics podcast. We're just 2 guys who know how to make things go viral. Don't take political advice from us. With that, have you seen those eBay screenshots of, and I think Facebook Marketplace, this is happening as well, but there are a ton of people selling their iPhones with TikTok pre-installed for 5K.
Really?
5K, 10K, or 15K. Reselling their iPhones with TikTok installed on the phone. So people, just to have access to TikTok, are buying this used iPhone with the app TikTok on it.
That's insane.
Hilarious.
Really? That's a thing? I had no idea.
It's
I love that.
I'll show you the Instagram links after, but it's so wild to see these eBay listings where there are auctions happening, and it's like iPhone 16 with TikTok installed, US SIM card, whatever. And so, I mean, when we speak of demand, but no, I think whatever happens, we're in an extremely great position. I think brands are very fortunate that their success doesn't depend on content that is siloed to one platform. It isn't as if you're banning Instagram and Facebook in 2014. I think brands would be truly fucked if that happened. Whereas you're in a point where there aren't a lot, you only have one video-based 2016-17, where realistically you only have one video-based channel that everyone is using. Now you have 2 to 3 that you could say are in everybody's, or the majority of people's daily lives content consumption. And so
Yeah.
we'll see. But either way, the future is extremely bright. And so
Yeah.
we're here for the journey. In regards to content pushing and things going forward, episode 6, stay tuned. We'll see you there.
All right, that's the pod.